can't believe you two took that raving lunatic seriously. What do you think this is?
Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a really great day today. I wanted to make a quick video to try my best to destroy the theory of evolution very concisely and very quickly. Now, to be clear, I'm addressing the differences between macroevolution and microevolution. The concept of microevolution is rational. It's simply another word for adaptation of a species over time to be more survivable or more successful in their environment. This is why we have variation within all species of plants and animals, but yet they still keep their clear differences from species to species. Now, this is where we come into the idea of macroevolution. Macroevolution is this concept that all life on Earth, be it plant or animal, has a common ancestor, and it formed several hundred millions of years ago, and we all just stay in a constant state of change, and we're all an amalgamation of other things, which is clearly ludicrous and is not represented at all by the scientific evidence. Now, to start off with, I'm going to address the 3 laws of thermodynamics, in particular, the second law, which is entropy, E-N-T-R-O-P-Y. Now, a clear layman's definition of entropy is just the degree of disorder and randomness in a system increases over time. Okay, this is just the simple concept that things degrade. They break down as time increases and goes on. We readily see this in our day-to-day lives in everything. Things wear down. That's just natural. Now, this concept of entropy, this law, matter of fact, not theory, but this law, is true for chemical, biological, as well as physical systems. Now, there is a clear reason why this theory of evolution is still just a theory after all of this time. It's not considered a law at all. If you look at something like every year, scientists estimate that between 200 to 2,000 species go extinct. Think about this. We have never, ever observed the birth of a new species of any sort in the plant or animal kingdom. But yet every year we see thousands of them go extinct. This is a problem for the theory of evolution, because if we are in a constant state of flux and of change, for one, individuals would all be different. And for two, we would have observed in mankind's history at least the birth of one new species at some point or another. This is troubling for these evolutionists. This idea of all of these species going extinct every year actually fits neatly into the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy. Things break down. Things get less complicated over time, not more complicated. Now, I also want to address highly specialized body parts and systems of all plants and animals. Now, you can look at stuff in animals like the nervous system, the digestive system, and the circulatory system. No one has ever come close to explaining how any of these systems evolved. And they're so intricately interwoven between themselves. Which one developed first? Here's an example. The ability to make powerful digestive acids and juices, or the production of mucus and membranes that can resist these corrosive acids. This is almost a catch-22. Which one came first? It really almost reeks of this old saying, which came first, the chicken or the egg. It's kind of simple. If you really look at this, most rational people looking at this old question that we have will really say that the chicken came first. The animal itself came first, because who would have fertilized the egg? Who would have incubated it? Who would have taken care of the newly hatched creature into this new world that has nothing to feed it or take care of it or for it to learn from, how to hunt, how to survive, any of that stuff. So most rational people will say that the mature or adult animal came first. So, of course, this leans towards intelligent design. Something or someone had to have created the original of these species of all different plants and animals, and then they produced others after their kind, which is what scripture would tell us. Now, also, if you look at natural selection, this concept is severely inefficient and is insufficient to explain macroevolution as well. For example, a very delicate and specialized body part such as an eye, or let's say a bird's wing. Now, some of you may have heard this before. A bird's wing is very, very, very delicate, and it is very, very, very complicated. Mankind has only mimicked the lift and some of the functionality that a bird's wing has done in our last 100 years of being here on this earth. And actually, we have just recently, in recent decades, let's say 20 years, been able to make an artificial bird wing or a machine that can fly like a bird does. Very, very, very complicated stuff. Now, if you look at that, what an evolutionist will tell you is that it took millions and millions and millions of years for the wing to have developed in most birds from a raptor-like dinosaur type of animal a long time ago. And this somehow gave a benefit to this animal. And so therefore that trait was passed on. Now, there's a big problem with that because over these millions of years, animals are very competitive. The world is a cruel place. We see thousands of animals go extinct every single year. So that's a problem. In this competitive world, this dangerous place called Earth, something like a delicate wing would have been a very, very bad and disadvantageous arm before it ever resembled anything close to a functioning wing. This would have put the bearer or the owner of this weak, inefficient, and just faulty arm at a very big disadvantage to its competitors and to any predators that might be wanting to make a meal out of it. So this makes no sense. Just sit and think about that for a second. Now, the most glaringly obvious problem with the theory of evolution, ironically, is acknowledged by the original promoter of this fantasy, Charles Darwin himself. And this problem is the complete lack of transitional species in the fossil records. We should literally be able to dig anywhere and find tons of fossils representing the billions, that's billions with a B, of distinct transitional species that the theory would require. There are absolutely none, and this cannot be ignored. Let me restate this. We should almost be able to go and dig in our backyard and find petrified plants and bones of animals that are all an amalgamation. We should be able to easily see the flow and the change of one species to another in the fossil record. We do not have one of any species at all that has held up under scrutiny to show a legitimate transitional species. Let's not forget the interesting case of the coelacanth fish, which was considered extinct. And fossilized evidence of this was said to be 350 million years old, and they touted it as this clear case of a transitional species, which supposedly had primitive lungs and legs, and this represented a fish that was getting ready to start moving on to land to become a little mouse or a cat or a dog or something. Now, this would have flown, and it did fly for a while, until in December of 1938, there was a little fisherman that found one off the coast of South Africa in his net, living. And under further investigation, we found more and more of these coelacanth fish, and we actually discovered that some tribal people in the area had been fishing and eating these things for many, many, many generations. So this living fossil was clearly not the owner of any lungs or primitive legs. It's just a fish that the evolutionists made up and said, oh, this looks like it could be, so this is this and that. And so they had this long explanation that turned out to be completely false. Even some of the infamous missing links, such as Lucy, that are supposedly found to represent stages in human evolution, have all later been found to be lies. It's very interesting that archaeologists and their departments like to have major finds at least every blue moon, because to justify the funding that their department gets, their salaries and accolades for their school or whatever whatnot may be, they have to come up with something, or else they cannot justify funding going to their departments and grants and other things of that nature. So what it ends up being is that many of these missing links we have learned now that they were just fabrications, or at the very least, very shoddy scientific research and work. There's been instances of, let's say, a human arm bone being found, and literally 2 to 3 miles away, they happen to stumble upon and dig up an ape-like skull. And so then they say, hey, here's a missing link. And they put a name to it. And all of a sudden, we have something else that has come out that is a missing link, supposedly. But now all of these things are not deemed to be accurate. So we have no verifiable missing link in the human species. Now, aside from natural selection and selective breeding, not even being able to produce a cat from a dog, mutations or errors in genetic coding obviously contributes to entropy in the biological system as well. Okay. Now, this is the idea that if natural selection didn't do it, or even if it wasn't selectively bred, let's say by humans, that's our intervention, or, anything of that nature naturally happening, that any other changes in evolution have been due to mutations. Now, what this was stating is that you can somehow make something more successful by introducing errors to it. And this is tantamount to software. If you introduce a line of gibberish code to the software, you will never have an improved program as the end result. This is ludicrous. This doesn't make sense. And as we all know, our genetics, our DNA, our helix codes, and all of life are very, very, very complicated, almost programs. They're chemical programs. And if anything, they break down as entropy would tell us. To think otherwise and to believe in macroevolution is very similar to stuff we've heard before. Like if you give a monkey 100 million years and a typewriter, that he would somehow be able to type out all the works of Shakespeare, or that if you have a tornado that goes through a junkyard, that it could somehow, out of the mess and the junk, form a functioning jet airplane. These are ridiculous, and these are actually more likely than the complex systems of life being developed just by random and then evolving from that point into these complex systems that we have today. We have never observed anything gain in complexity in this nature. We've only seen things degrade, as our law of entropy would tell us. So these are just a few things to think about. I could really go on further, but I won't do that. I really wanted to just put that out there in a somewhat concise form for us to think about and mull over. But there are currently many reputable scientists and researchers that cast serious doubt on this theory of evolution, and some outright just don't believe in it at all. All right, you guys take care. I'll talk to you next time, and let's not be destroyed for lack of knowledge.